Well, hello everybody. I'll give it again that minute to let people log on. I want to have a talk about Christianity and Orthodox. And the issue is, of course, Jesus Christ. When you say Christian, how does that compute when you don't believe in Jesus Christ? Sorry, but we see that with Judaism, with the Muslim faiths, and they don't add Muslim to the definition of Christianity. So why do we say Christian, Christian, when these groups don't believe in Jesus none whatsoever? Why do we say Christian? Why do they group it together? They don't do that with Muslims. Why would you do that with Orthodox? Why would you do that with many secular faiths? Why do they do that? They say, well, that's because there's Old Testament added to a lot of these groups and their tenets. When you look at the Ten Commandments and other, why do you call it Christian if they stop at Jesus Christ? If they say, hey, look, Jesus Christ isn't going to come forward in this narrative. Well, I have an issue with that, and I think a lot of world scholars ignore that. They often turn their back because of the overwhelming negative response from the faith-based world, which is a majority in this world. It is. We separate Muslim, but why do we not separate the other groups? You can't say they're Christian, Christ, if the groups don't believe in Christ. Why do you do it? Which brings me now to world stats. Officially today, across all countries, backed up by all records released by those governments. Yes, to the organization WHO, but it's absolutely each and every country, which means UN state countries, statistical releases, meaning you can look at WHO data and then you can go click on the country, go on the country's official website, go to their health ministry and find all those numbers. So that's what the country reports. That's what the country releases to their citizenry, and it tells you vaccination status. So who is the most vaccinated in the world? Well, that is United Arab Emirates by a large margin. 93% double vaccinated. They're already ripping through third doses, and then there are those in each categories getting ready for a fourth dose. Where does Canada sit today? Well, we're shared amongst 8 countries, depending on you look at what the data released, which days. Canada's behind. Kind of like hockey, when you look at hockey teams, they'll say, well, this hockey team is in 6th place, but they're 4 games behind everybody else. So you can't really say they're in 6th place. They're likely going to be in 4th place because they have 4 more games on some teams yet to play. And when they play them, even if they tie 2 of those games, lose 2, they'd have to lose all the games to be in the place that they're being assigned. And that statistically usually doesn't happen in top teams. But that's just what we do. It's done all over in many, many statistics. Canada sits at 18th place out of 193 nations. That's reality, but we're likely sitting at about 12th place out of all the nations in the world. And what's extra special about Canada is its absolute remote and absolutely dispersed populations. With the First Peoples in the remote locations, it's an unbelievable achievement. That's reality. That vaccinations for Canadians, and to be in the top tier that they are, a likely 12th place, is nearly an impossible feat. So who else is up there? When we look at countries, people talk about free countries, full-on dictatorships. Well, it's split. And, you know, to burst everybody's bubble, We can talk about cultural side of things. The Asian world leads the charge on vaccinations when they're not the wealthiest, not by a large margin. It doesn't really matter, regardless, when you look through the Asian world, whether they're a full-on democracy or they're a full-on dictatorship. They lead overall in the most vaccinated, highest vaccine rates. We see that in mainland China, all through the Beijing empire, so to speak. We see they're the highest of the P5. China wins hands down. Huge population, huge feat by a second world ranked nation. China's second world when you look at the value of the Chinese per person per capita to the rest of the world. We also see Cuba there. We see other namely dictatorships, but we see a whole pile of some of the freest countries in the world. South Korea, the list goes on and on. Denmark's there. They trump Canada. There's other countries. Chile's there outside of the Asian world. Chile is right up there in the top 5. Canada's trailing, but not by a whole lot. And when you look at the diversity of the population and the sheer remote regions of Canada, it's only 40 million population dispersed amongst a massive distance when you look at where everybody's located. It's a huge feat. It does pretty much roll out that Canada released the best vaccination program in the world. When you add up all statistical factors, it's huge, but it didn't come at a cheap cost. It came at a monumental cost, a huge cost. And is it worth it? It looks like it is when you look at hospitalizations in ICU. We still have a huge amount of the population overwhelming that system. And even people who are double vaccinated, not well rolled out by the government. They didn't roll out the program very well at all. Didn't educate to anybody real science and what the experts say. Politicians took control and used it for their own means. That's clear. They didn't articulate manufacturers, didn't share that with Canadians, didn't even bother to tell Canadians it would always be a reoccurring dose. That was never made secret. It was always a part of Operation Warp Speed. Nothing was hidden from anybody. You can go back in historical logs and you will find the CEOs telling the populations that there's no cure for a virus. Many experts will tell you that there's never been. They can limit them, they can reduce them, they can weaken them, they can manipulate them to a certain degree through medications on the populations and treatments, but they can't stop them, they can't eliminate them. There's no cure for any viruses in the world today. That's reality. It's something we live with. This has never been a secret. There's more than 205 known viruses in the world today. There are always new ones coming. It's all part of the evolutionary cycle, whether you want to call that life or in between life or not life. That's still debatable. They kind of give viruses a zombie status, not really alive, but not really dead. Science isn't quite there yet. But when we get into everything and we get into Christianity, people sharing absolute and utter bullshit about Israel, this has been a long known statistic that Israel is not leading the world in vaccines, not even close. They're extremely far down the list. Are they doing pretty good? Yeah, but they've hit a wall, and that's called Orthodox Jews. And it's not to be racist, it's not to put people down, but again, this is where I question when people say, oh, it's Christianity. If you don't believe in the teachings of Jesus, you don't teach those in your religion, you're not Christian. Sorry, I don't know why world theologist experts don't distinguish that. I've seen a few try, and they get utterly chased out of the academic community. Well, I don't have to worry about that because I tell people things as they really are, as it is in the world today. Israel's never going to top out on vaccination status. We can look at the Orthodox side of Russia. We can look at the history of the Soviet Union and Russia. Putin couldn't get his vaccination status up ever. That's reality. He sits at 51%. He can't push it any farther without entering a model like the USSR, which the people will not accept. For those who don't know the history of the Soviet Union, specifically Poland, and a lot of things that happened in forced medical, no leader of Russia is ever going to be able to push the envelope any farther, really, than what he's done. This is also true for the United States of America, who also, too, is extremely low on vaccination status. They're way, way below Israel, who's way down in the pack. That's reality, and it shows in hospitalizations. Now, why is it not an issue for the United States of America? Well, the United States of America has a huge budgetary expense called military, and in that is ICU capacity. You will not find another country in this world today, statistically, with the amount of ICU capacity staffed 24/7 anywhere else in the world. There is no country that can compare to the United States of America. Now, why is that? Because America is ready to go to war anytime they need to. Beyond all other countries in this world, the one country that can go to war and continue war in an extended period of time is the United States of America. Their ICU capacity, staffed, fully staffed, always there, is available and running 24/7. You would need COVID to be 10 times worse than it is worldwide right now with Omicron to even put half a dent in that American system. That's reality. And again, why is that? Because America's ready to go to war with anyone on a moment's notice and treat all casualties in ICU. This is an existence of America, the institution of America, that's extremely old, and they continue that. You will not find another nation in this world through constitutionalism that has been in a nearly perpetual state of war with either themselves, with other countries, anywhere else in the world. They go toe to toe. They carry on. Their system goes without skipping a beat. Why is that? Look at the history of the United States of America, from the 13 colonies to the 50 states of today. They've had revolutionary wars. They've had the wars of independence. They've had wars against France to boot them out of North America. They had wars with UK to boot them out of North America. They've had wars with Spain to boot them out of North America, their territory, the 50 United States. That's the truth. They've had Indian wars, 60 years of it, in fact, straight, never stopping. They've been all over the war defending their democracy, their supply and value chains, no matter how big the numbers, no matter how big the opposition. People don't like historical truths or things as they really are. The United States can't be put down by this pandemic. Not with their military budget, not with their capacity of ICUs. It's just a drop in the bucket, regardless of vaccination status. Canada isn't like this, with a massive budget in health care. We are good at treating instant injury, critical ailments that hit you right now, but we're not capable of dealing with disease, preventative medicine, or triage protocol. We don't have the military budget, We don't have the ICU capacity. We don't have any kind of hospital capacity. That's our system. That's Canada. Like it or love it, they call it free healthcare. There's nothing free about it. People try to criticize me. Why do you keep going on the health portfolio? Because, ladies and gentlemen, it's the number one expense in Canada, our health portfolio. Do you get the bang for the buck that you put out? No, you don't. It's a broken system, highly corrupt and wasteful. That's reality. I'm not the only one who shares this. Many from the conservative side of the spectrum, the physical conservative, sees this clearly. Liberals don't see this clearly. People accusing me of being a liberal. I am so sorry, but it is actually you who's the liberal. And again, a lot of you claiming to be Christian, I am sorry, a lot of that Old Testament propaganda you perpetuate and you talk, sometimes in the name of Christ. He never spoke any of those words. There is nobody in the time of Christ who backs up anything you say. Those reverting to Revelations. Revelations came more than a century, some argue almost 2 centuries after Jesus died on the cross. Nearly 2 centuries, at least known for sure I can state more than a century and a half after he died, is Revelations. And it's been rewritten, folks, many times. Many things in the Bible have been rewritten. The Church of England, a lot of the Orthodox faith, we see it with the Muslim faith and Judaism. I'm sorry, but these are older religions that don't follow really the path of Jesus. Some secular faiths adopt some of it, but go heavy on Old Testament, which is nothing of which Jesus ever spoke about. You will not find that as teachings. There are even people talking about Greek, and Jesus spoke Greek. He didn't speak Greek. He never went to Greece. That wasn't his language, and you will not find any historical records of the time of Jesus or anyone in the time of Jesus who spoke and wrote in Greek about Jesus. Never happened. There's even in Japan, there's a whole secular group who believes Jesus visited Japan. I'm sorry, he was never there. And people can get mad and say, oh, you're so offensive, you're so bad, you're so... Show me historical evidence. Everyone knows Jesus walked the earth. Whether you want to believe in him or not is not the issue. It's how you talk about his historical teachings and writings. You will not find those writings in all these other languages. That's a complete and utter lie. There are absolutely no records to prove any of that. Nothing's ever been found. He visited 4 countries in the world: Latin, Arabic, and Hebrew. That's all there is for Jesus. I'm sorry. He talked to the Hebrew faith, the high-ranking officials of the Hebrews of the time. He obviously spoke Hebrew. We know he grew up in an Arabic community. Israel, Palestine, ladies and gentlemen. Arabic. That's how he grew up. He was a carpenter. We can argue all day long, it doesn't really matter. But when you say Japanese or Greek, you're way out to lunch. And there are zero records, none whatsoever, in absolutely the scientific community and the theologian community to back up anyone saying any of that crap. Not true. No way. Did Jesus walk a lot of miles in his limited lifetime? Absolutely. In fact, just in those 4 countries, he could have walked around the world once, all the way around the world. That's how much walking he did in his lifetime. And we know that's limited in years. That's a busy guy. And that's just 4 countries. He never went to any of the other countries. He never spoke those language, never went there. That's the only records in existence. And it's provable, it's in science, it's in theology, and anyone speaking outside of that and people not calling it out is because you can't offend people because it hurts feelings. And this has been going on for many, many decades, long before I was even born. This fight, this reality. And like I said, the Christian community is not really as big as people claim it to be. Because if you don't believe in Jesus and you don't follow any of his teachings, you can take Christianity out of your narrative. You're not Christian if you don't follow and believe in Jesus Christ and his teachings, which is New Testament. You're not really a Christian. Sorry. That's an incorrect assessment. That's an incorrect statement. It's like me saying I'm Muslim when I don't subscribe to the Quran. I don't follow much of that book. There's some Old Testament teachings there I've read about, I've learned through some Christian faiths, but it's not Christian if you don't believe in Jesus. That's reality. Christian. Christ. That's the truth. And people accept it or they don't. You will find it's the faiths outside of Jesus Christ that largely don't subscribe to medical treatments like vaccinations. That's your choice, but it comes at a cost, and we have that clear cost in real science. Just as real science tells you, if you don't believe or subscribe to Jesus, you're not Christian. That's real science and real theology. That's my video today. It's kind of imperative if we look at people and their false narratives, and you see a whole bunch of these secular faith believers that sit there and they try to say, oh, Israel, highest vaccine rates. Not even close. And they're never going to be. Just like USA, just like Russia, just like many other countries in this world. I'm sorry, it's your theology and what's assigned to your country. Can't even push it past in past history, especially the former Soviet Union. You're never going to get big vaccination rates. And the country suffers. And, you know, what do you say? Eventually, there's going to be costs associated with that. Thanks. That's my video. Bye now, everybody.